Breaking right now, guilty of racketeering, bribery, and extortion. Chicago's longest-serving alderman convicted.
How does it feel to be a convicted felon?
We have live team coverage of the verdict, what it means, and what's next. Good afternoon. I'm Erica Sargent.
Great to have you with us. I'm Joe Donlin. We begin here at 5 with breaking news. After 5 weeks of testimony and 23 hours of deliberations, former Chicago Alderman Ed Burke was found guilty today of these 13 counts, the most serious right at the top, racketeering.
We've been covering the federal corruption trial from gavel to gavel. We have live team coverage, including what happened in the courtroom. We begin with CBS 2 political reporter Chris Ty. Chris, you were there when the jury's verdict was announced.
That's right, Joe and Erica. By every measure, this was a historic case in Chicago history. The longest serving alderman in the city's history now found guilty on 13 of 14 counts. Before it was all done, another member of council flipped on Burke, becoming an FBI mole, recording him secretly, saying iconic lines like, "Have we landed the tuna?" or "Has the cash register rung yet?" In the end, a jury of 9 women and 3 men decided that Ed Burke did try to cash register ring his way to profits and line his own pockets along the way. This is video of Ed Burke leaving the Dirksen Federal Building about 2 hours ago. He was followed by his attorneys and his family. He did not want to speak to the media. In a press conference shortly after his exit from this building, we did, though, hear from the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, talking about how that man entering that vehicle right there is now part of a sad historical history in Chicago.
Alderman Burke obviously joins a long list of corrupt city council aldermen who have been convicted of corruption charges over here in federal court. All I can say is what I said before, that we're determined to continue to investigate these cases using any and all lawful tools at our disposal.
In the end, it took this jury 23 hours to come to their decision today, and this was not a clean sweep for the U.S. Attorney. Burke guilty of 13 of 14 counts, but his assistant, his former assistant, Pete Andrews, was found not guilty on all 5 counts against him. Businessman Charles Quay, who was involved in that Binny's pole sign component of this case, was found guilty on all 5 of his counts. Live at the Dirksen Federal Building, Chris Ty, CBS 2 News. Joe and Erica.
Chris, thank you.
Now to CBS 2 investigator Megan Hickey. She's also live at the Dirksen Federal Building with more on what's next for the former alderman. Megan?
Right. We've been waiting more than 6 weeks for this decision that would decide not just the fate, but also the legacy of Burke. Joining me now is CBS 2 legal expert Irv Miller to talk a little bit about next steps. And Irv, how does the appeals process work from here?
Well, after he's sentenced, he's going to be told to report to a penitentiary, and while that's going on, he's going to appeal this case to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeal in this building. The problem for him is, in the appeal, he's no longer presumed to be innocent, he's presumed to be guilty. And appellate courts don't usually reverse on proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That was decided by the jury. He has to come up basically with some technical irregularity in order to have any hopes of winning an appeal in this case.
And how often does that happen? Is that rare?
That's very rare. That does not happen a lot.
Okay. We know we have a sentencing date in mid-June. That's obviously several months from now. Why such a long time, and why is that standard in this federal arena?
Because it's important that the probation department do a pre-sentence investigation, a detailed report laying out everything about him, personally, professionally, education, medical issues, so the judge can decide based upon that history what is the appropriate sentence at a sentencing hearing.
And our viewers might be surprised by that. I know in state court it's obviously a much shorter amount of time. Why is there a difference?
Because actually this pre-sentence report is very valuable. It's so detailed. It's necessary in order for the judge to determine what the sentencing guidelines are that they use as an advisory type mechanism as to what is the appropriate sentence. So it's a really important process.
And that sentence itself, very much up in the air right now.
Very much up in the air. It's totally up to the judge. The most he could get is 20 and do 85% of it, 20 years. That's not going to happen. She's going to look at the guidelines and say, try to fit it in there someplace. My guess is 8 to 12 years, somewhere in that ballpark.
All right, we'll see how that works out. I know we saw Burke walk through here. He got in a car, he headed home. How is his life different now than it was prior to this verdict?
You know, until he actually has to report to the front door of a federal penitentiary, it's not going to change at all. He's going to be out. He's going to do what he wants. But he has to kind of go to the probation officer and try to hopefully get a good report out of that office. So hopefully he'll get a lower end of the sentence scheme and not anywhere near the top. He doesn't want to hear double digits.
All right, we'll see. Thank you so much for your input, Irv. For now, we're live at Dirksen. Sending it back to you.
Megan, thank you.
As Megan mentioned, Alderman Burke, former alderman, he was back at his home. Our Charlie DeMar is live outside of his Southwest Side home. Charlie, he got back there about 45 minutes ago.
Yeah, shortly after he left Dirksen Federal Court Building, he returned here to the Southwest Side to his heavily gated home. He was with his wife, and after his sentencing hearing in June, he will be protected by a much different set of metal bars. Now again, Burke left Dirksen Federal Court Building with his wife Ann and a member of his legal team. They arrived to their home with Burke sitting in the front seat. Burke continued to keep his silence as he has throughout the entire trial. He declined to say anything as he solemnly walked through his front door wearing his signature trench coat and hat, holding a briefcase, again walking through that front door for the first time as a convicted felon. Again, he will be allowed to go about his life for about the next 6 months as he will not hear his sentence until mid-June. Reporting live from the Southwest Side, I'm Charlie DeMar, CBS 2 News.
All right. Thank you, Charlie.
Reaction is pouring in to today's major developments.
Joining us now to discuss the verdict is 38th Ward Alderman Nicholas Pizzato. Alderman, you served with Ed Burke for about a decade. So what do you think when you hear all of those guilty verdicts?
Well, I'm saddened. I mean, the Ed Burke I know is a generous, caring man, a man who helped me tremendously in my 12 years that I've served with him. Ed Burke treated the custodian the same way he treated the mayor. So, you know, I feel bad for Ed. I wasn't sitting in on there. I'm just a little baffled by, we never heard much about Danny Solis, how he got off so easy. So.
Well, yeah, that was part of the deal. And there were many who questioned whether he should have gotten off and was it worth it to get Burke. But that's, I guess, a debate for another day. Alderman, let me ask you this. I'm sure people will watch this and see the result and say City Hall is dirty. It always has been and it always will be. How would you respond to that?
I would say that's totally false. That's not true. You have a lot of hardworking, considerate people. Certainly Ed Burke was one of them also. So, you know, I don't know. I wouldn't say City Hall is dirty. People make mistakes in life. And, you know, you got a good, hardworking city council in there. And I never saw any dirtiness in my 12 and a half years.
Well, Alderman, there are over 30 former aldermen who have been convicted. And if you compare that to other cities, that's quite high. So why do you believe there are so many convictions and why it's so common in Chicago?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure of that. And I don't know, considering all the years and the times, and compare us to any other jobs where you're policemen, firemen, teachers. I don't know if it's a high number or not, but from my 12 and a half years, I haven't seen anything of that nature.
All right, Alderman Pizzato, thank you for joining us.
Well, today's conviction certainly marks a stunning fall from grace for Burke, who was once considered the most powerful person in city council. First sworn in 1969, Burke served 54 years in council, serving under 7 different mayors. He famously helped lead the council wars against former Mayor Harold Washington, and he was the longtime chairman of the council's finance committee as well, giving him control of the city's purse strings. His downfall began in November of 2018 with the infamous FBI raid of his offices. He was indicted several months later.
Keep it right here on CBS 2 for continuing coverage of this historic verdict. We'll have more live reports on what the jury's decision means coming up on our news at 6.